Congresswoman, welcome. We appreciate you being here. This is the Joint Center. I'm going to be.
Appreciate you doing this. This is great.
No, we appreciate you taking time for us. I'm going to step back for a moment, and I'm going to basically turn it over to our board member, Robert Rabin, who can kind of open us up and give us some context here. And Robert, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much.
Robert, how are you?
I'm blessed that we're able to have the technology to do this. I'm really just so grateful. We wish to have you.
Are you sick? You don't sound well.
No, that's just me.
Oh.
That's just me dealing with your colleagues on the Hill day and night. And thank you for your incredible efforts on the important relief that's coming to so many people. Just what a difference it is to have different people in charge in the House pushing for workers. God bless you.
Thank you.
Just some preliminaries. We're the Joint Center. I've been privileged to be on the board and serving Spencer Overton and Barbara Johnson, our chair, for a long time. And this is part of a series that Paul Thornell, one of our board members, instituted, Voices at the Table. And it's very straightforward. It's an opportunity for our supporters and our allies at other organizations. I see you, Judith Brown. To visit with people who are making the difference for the communities that we care about. You know the work of the Joint Center, you know what we're organized around. I can dispense with that. We probably have on the call some of our board members, Antonio Williams, Scott Bolden, Professor Diane Pender-Hughes, Paula Boyd, Chanel Hardy. And if I missed anybody, we have a chat function on Zoom. People should both identify who you are. We have many, many people on the call. Say who you are so the Congresswoman can have a chance to look at the side of her screen and just of with whom she's talking. I'll say just a minute about you, although I could go on for 30, I won't. We all know that Congresswoman Karen Bass has been in Congress, it's a decade now, representing Culver City, South Los Angeles. And she does double duty, which is incredible. She chairs both the Africa Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House and is the acting chair of the Crime and Terrorism Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee. That's in addition to chairing the Congressional Black Caucus for this session. So that is 3 jobs in one. Prior, Congresswoman Bass was Speaker, longtime member of the California Assembly and Speaker. In addition to tremendous legislative achievements, which brought her the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award, she has the note of being the first African-American woman in the United States of America to hold a position like that. We're so proud of that. In addition to the Profile and Courage Award, my other favorite thing about her, and I'm editorializing and not speaking on behalf of the Joint Center, but she launched a petition in 2016 to have Donald Trump psychologically evaluated for narcissistic personality disorder. And as one of the signers of the petition, I appreciate your leadership. In addition, she's an incredibly warm and caring person who spends a prodigious amount of time over the years worried about the least among us in foster care and really providing a voice for the voiceless. So thank you so much for visiting with us.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to you.
So Robert, thanks so much here. And obviously want to thank our board chair, Barbara Johnson, rest of the great board. Thanks to the staff that put this together, Vice President Jessica Fulton, Victoria Johnson, Rosalind Hannibal Booker. And also thank you all for being here. You all bring unique perspectives to the table. We're looking forward to the discussion and exchange with each other and with Congresswoman Bass on where the COVID-19 legislation has likely succeeded and fallen short with regard to Black workers, families, and communities. And also, we want to hear from you about particular challenges Black communities may be facing as a result of this outbreak that may be overlooked by others. I want to repeat Robert's request. Rather than taking the time to do verbal introductions, if you have not already, please type your name and your organization into the chat function so we can see who's on here. Let me also remind you that this video conference is being recorded. And so what we're going to do today is we'll talk to Chairwoman Bass about where we are in terms of the legislative positioning with regard to COVID, and then we'll move into discussion. To make a comment or to ask a question, just type the fact that you have a question and then we'll put you in the queue. So we want you to stay on mute, and then when we come to you in the queue, we want to basically unmute you. You make your comment, your question, that kind of thing. If you're on the phone, in order to unmute, you need to press *6 and raise your hand to indicate that you have a question. So if you need to raise your hand just to indicate you have a question, press *6. So to unmute, let me just repeat that. To unmute, press *6.
Reverend Barbara.
If you want to have a question, press *9. So we've got Reverend Barber on the phone. Thank you very much, Reverend Barber from North Carolina. He's joining us via phone. I know Hillary Shelton is joining us via phone. Is there anyone else who is unable to type in that they're here who's on the phone in addition to Reverend Barber and also Hillary Shelton from the NAACP? Anyone else on the phone?
Ron Busby, U.S. Black Chamber.
Okay, we got Ron Busby of the U.S. Black Chambers. Who else? Anybody else on the phone?
And Alicia Garza from the Black Futures Lab.
Okay, we got Alicia from the Black Futures Lab, Alicia Garza, and I think, was that Clint Odom?
Yeah, I'm going to wait. Clint Odom with the National Urban League as well.
Okay, gotcha. Anybody else?
Olita Fitzgerald.
And
with the
Olita,
Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative, yeah.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
This is Sandra Martinez from the California Wellness Foundation.
Great, thanks so much for joining us. Anyone else?
Paul Braithwaite Spencer.
Okay, Paul, thanks for joining us. Okay, so Congresswoman Bass, I'm going to kind of turn now towards you here. And so thank you so much for keeping us informed on this legislation, Congresswoman Bass. And thanks for looking for input from a cross-section of the Black community. We got folks from all over the country here on this video conference. You certainly understand politics, how legislative bodies work, but you've also been very community-focused, very inclusive. We're really appreciative of your leadership during this critical time in our community. So now, before we move into the legislation that's moving right now, we circulated your letter to Speaker Pelosi, and we circulated that letter to folks who are on the call to just make sure that they were familiar with the CBC's priorities. Even though that's the case, could you just start us off and give us a moment, a couple minutes, give us a quick overview of your objectives, of the CBC's objectives and priorities with regard to COVID-19 legislation?
Sure. And first of all, thank you so much, Spencer, for inviting me. And this is just an incredible, esteemed group of leaders from all over the country. So, and it's so timely to have this call because we just finished in the process of voting on the third bill related to COVID-19, but we know there's going to be a fourth and probably a fifth bill. And I would love to talk about that before our time is up. But, you know, since none of us have been on this journey before, to me, this feels like a combination of 9/11 and 2008 on the same day. And so, you know, the first, in my opinion, the first couple of packages are really spaghetti in the wall, trying to put your finger, you know, to stop a flood. And you don't have time to be very thoughtful about what all of the needs are. And so the Congressional Black Caucus was faced with that as well. And we tried to come up with multiple categories, as you saw in our letter. We certainly don't think that is comprehensive. And that was not an inclusive process. We want the future ones to be so, but we had to prepare very quickly. And, you know, we knew that what was going to be coming through the Senate was just going to be, you know, a straight up Republican bill, corporate giveaway. We were concerned about the safety net. We were concerned about the people that would fall through the cracks. So many of our folks work part-time or in the gig economy, don't necessarily have the supports that folks need. And so that was really our focus in our categories, worrying about SNAP, worrying about unemployment insurance, worrying about small businesses, all of that. And we do think that the transformation that took place in the Senate from what they had originally proposed to what we have now is significantly better. But, you know, will it help? Will the money trickle down to our community? You know that after the bill is passed, then you have to begin, number one, educating people about what's in the bill, and then fighting to make sure that those resources come down to the community. So that is our focus right now. Because the bill was just finalized and passed late last night, you know it's going to take us several days to really analyze the bill to see what is there. We know that we got some of the things we need, but you know, the details are very important. I was made aware yesterday that there's some parts of the bill that are punitive, meaning that if you you know, sign up for benefits and maybe you weren't eligible, there might be criminal charges. So we have to go through the bill with a fine-tooth comb, because we know we're going to need to go into immediate action after we have digested the bill to prepare for the next one, but also to push back against some of the measures if they are as negative as we think they might be. Overall, though, I think it was a big win compared to what the Senate was going to do on its own.
Right. So now, I know it's a long bill, and we certainly don't expect you to get into details here too much, but in terms of, you know, what passed the Senate last night and this third bill, could you kind of give us, you're much closer to it than we are, could you give us a snapshot of what's there here, and also where, you know, it seems to fall short with regard to Black communities, and also where does it succeed with regard to Black communities?
Sure. So I think a few things. Number one, the fact that people will get checks if your income is below $75,000, well, actually $90,000, people will get checks. If your income is below $75,000, you will get a $1,200 check and $500 per child, which I think is fine. But you know, on the other hand, if I've lost my job, a $1,000 check is nice, but that helps me for a few weeks. So the unemployment insurance was very critical. And so that was provided. The Republicans attempted to take out the $600 increase, but they were not able to do that, as I understand. SNAP benefits have been increased, obviously not to the dollar amount that we wanted to. And it's my understanding, but again, I got to see it in writing. One of the things that we wanted to do was to take away the work requirement that the administration put in administratively, because they weren't able to pass that legislatively. So we want that removed. SBA resources were put in. What's really important is payroll support for companies that it's a loan, but if you don't lay off your workers, it turns into a grant. There was not money specifically for HBCUs, but the money is for minority serving institutions. So that's not, you know, the win that we wanted, but at least there are some resources there. There's money for prisons, but it's for healthcare in general. What we wanted was testing of all federal prisoners, and frankly, state and county as well, but you know, our jurisdiction is federal. And we also wanted significant early release. Why would pregnant women be incarcerated right now, and juveniles? There is resources to local governments, but local cities, but the city has to be over 500,000. So of course that leaves out a lot of our cities. There is support for states, which is fine depending on what state you live in. There's money for election protection. There's also the community health centers, which was very, very important in terms of how this epidemic is going to hit our communities. You know that the infrastructure for community health centers is absolutely vital. Then there's resources for community service block grants, which is a type of funding that is very flexible. Again, depending on where you live, that's a positive thing, or it might be diverted away. There's also community development block grant money and money for Head Start. So that's just a snapshot.
No, I certainly appreciate it. Now, what are the next steps in terms of Congress? What will likely happen over the next 2 or 3 months? And what does the CBC need from the group on this conference call to most effectively represent Black communities?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, first of all, just in terms of the process, the House will vote on the bill tomorrow. The House is going to allow for debate because there are some members that want to come back and do that. But the bill will be voted on by voice. So it's my sense that the president will sign the bill tomorrow. So it'll be a voice vote probably in the afternoon, and I would imagine he would sign in the evening. So what we have to do, and the we meaning Congressional Black Caucus staff, will be drilling down very deep and reading this 800+ page bill for the good, bad, and the ugly. And then we want to immediately, now that these 3 packages have been done, I think we have a little bit of breathing room. And in that little bit of breathing room, we need to organize now and advocate, but we also need to learn, all of us on the call, all of us around the country, we need to learn how this pandemic is impacting our communities. Now we can imagine, because we know we have challenges with healthcare access. We know about, our workforce, and we know about the people who are not working. They don't get a check. You know what I mean? I mean, they might, depending on whether or not they filed taxes last year. But we know that there are a lot of people that are left out of this package. So what I've been talking to Mark Morial from the Urban League, and I don't know if he's on this call, but I know the Urban League will be represented. And we have a CBC meeting today where I'm going to propose that we join forces, establish a collaboration. I would love for the people on this call to be a part of it. Number one, to help us figure out, I mean, you have the CBC's document. There is another document that a number of civil rights organizations, many of whom I believe are on this call, put together. We need to look at those 2 documents and see what else is needed. And then we need to start organizing and advocating, because we know if there's going to be a package, let's get started now. Again, we had to throw things together very, very quickly because we were in such a crisis. But I do think we have a little bit of breathing room, so let's organize.